Imagine you're scrolling through your favorite news app. You come across an article that aligns perfectly with your views. You nod in agreement, perhaps even share it with friends. Then, you see another piece presenting an opposing perspective. You skim it briefly, maybe dismiss it as biased or uninformed and move on. This subtle, almost automatic behavior is a manifestation of confirmation bias, a cognitive tendency where we favor information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore or discount information that challenges them. This bias isn't just about what we read, it permeates how we interpret and recall information. For instance, if you believe that a particular diet is the healthiest, you're more likely to remember success stories supporting that diet and forget or rationalize stories that contradict it. This selective memory reinforces your belief, creating a self-sustaining loop. The roots of confirmation bias run deep. Psychologist Peter Wayson's experiments in the 1960s shed light on this phenomenon. In one study, participants were given a sequence of numbers, 2, 4, 6, and asked to determine the rule governing the sequence. Most assumed the rule was increasing by 2, and tested sequences like 8, 10, 12. They rarely considered sequences that might disprove their hypothesis, such as 2, 3, 4. In reality, the rule was simply any ascending sequence. This experiment highlighted our propensity to seek confirmation rather than refutation. In everyday life, confirmation bias can have significant consequences. Consider the realm of politics. Individuals often consume media that aligns with their ideological leanings, creating echo chambers where opposing viewpoints are seldom encountered. This environment reinforces existing beliefs and can lead to increased polarization as people become more entrenched in their views. The medical field isn't immune either. A doctor might form an initial diagnosis based on a patient's symptoms and then unconsciously focus on evidence supporting that diagnosis, overlooking signs that point to alternative explanations. This can lead to misdiagnoses and ineffective treatments. In the legal system, confirmation bias can influence investigations. Once a suspect is identified, investigators might focus on evidence that confirms their guilt, disregarding exculpatory evidence. This tunnel vision can result in wrongful convictions, as has been documented in numerous cases. Social interactions are also affected. If you believe a colleague dislikes you, you're more likely to interpret their neutral actions as negative, reinforcing your belief. This can strain relationships and create unnecessary tension. Even our hobbies aren't safe. Sports fans often perceive referees as biased against their team, especially after unfavorable calls. This perception persists despite evidence to the contrary, fueled by the desire to protect the team's image and our emotional investment in it. Confirmation bias also plays a role in perpetuating stereotypes. If someone believes that a particular group is untrustworthy, they'll notice and remember instances that support this belief while ignoring instances that contradict it. This selective perception reinforces prejudiced views and hinders social cohesion. In the digital age, algorithms exacerbate confirmation bias. Social media platforms curate content based on our previous interactions, showing us more of what we like and less of what we don't. This personalization creates filter bubbles, limiting exposure to diverse perspectives and reinforcing existing beliefs. Recognizing confirmation bias is the first step toward mitigating its effects. Actively seeking out opposing viewpoints engaging in open-minded discussions and critically evaluating information can help. In professional settings, implementing structured decision-making processes and encouraging dissenting opinions can counteract the bias. Educational initiatives that promote critical thinking and media literacy are also vital. Teaching individuals to question sources, evaluate evidence, and consider alternative viewpoints fosters a more informed and less biased populace. In conclusion, confirmation bias is a pervasive cognitive tendency that influences how we process information, make decisions, and interact with others. By acknowledging its presence and actively working to counteract it, we can make more balanced decisions, foster healthier relationships, and contribute to a more open and understanding society. Imagine you're watching the evening news. The anchor reports a recent shark attack at a popular beach. The footage is dramatic, showing emergency responders and distressed witnesses. The next day, you reconsider your plans to go swimming, thinking, shark attacks are becoming more common. But are they? Statistically, shark attacks are exceedingly rare. Yet, the vividness of the report makes the danger feel immediate and probable. This is the availability heuristic at work, a mental shortcut where we judge the likelihood of events based on how easily examples come to mind. Our brains are wired to prioritize information that's readily accessible. When making decisions, we often rely on immediate examples rather than comprehensive data. This tendency helps us navigate daily life efficiently, but can lead to skewed perceptions. For instance, after hearing about a plane crash, some individuals might develop a fear of flying, despite air travel being one of the safest modes of transportation. The crash, being a recent and emotionally charged event, dominates their thoughts, making flying seem riskier than it is. Consider the case of lottery winners. Media coverage often highlights their stories, showcasing sudden wealth and transformed lives. These narratives are compelling and memorable. As a result, people might overestimate their chances of winning and spend more on lottery tickets, ignoring the overwhelming odds against them. The availability heuristic causes them to focus on the few success stories they recall, rather than the countless others who didn't win. In the realm of health, this bias can influence our perceptions of disease prevalence. Suppose a celebrity is diagnosed with a rare illness, and it's widely reported. Suddenly, many individuals become concerned about that disease, seeking medical tests or altering their lifestyles, even if their actual risk remains low. The disease feels more common because it's top of mind, not because its incidence has increased. The availability heuristic also plays a role in our social judgments. If someone frequently hears about crimes committed by a particular group, they might develop biased views, believing that group is more prone to criminal behavior. This perception isn't based on comprehensive crime statistics, but on the frequency and intensity of the reports they've encountered. Such biases can perpetuate stereotypes and fuel discrimination. In financial markets, investors might make decisions based on recent trends. If a particular stock has been performing well and is frequently discussed in the media, investors might flock to it, believing its success will continue. They recall its recent performance easily and assume it's a safe bet, potentially ignoring underlying risks or broader market indicators. Our personal experiences further shape this bias. If someone has been bitten by a dog, they might perceive dogs as dangerous, even if most dogs are friendly. The memory of the bite is vivid and easily recalled, influencing their judgment in future encounters with dogs. The media's role in amplifying the availability heuristic is significant. Sensational stories, dramatic visuals, and emotional narratives are more likely to be reported and remembered. This focus can distort public perception, making rare events seem common, and common events seem rare. For example, extensive coverage of terrorist attacks can lead individuals to overestimate their frequency, fostering unnecessary fear and anxiety. To mitigate the effects of the availability heuristic, it's essential to seek out comprehensive data and diverse perspectives. When evaluating risks or making decisions, consider consulting reliable statistics and expert analyses. Being aware of this cognitive bias allows us to question our initial impressions and strive for more balanced judgments. In our daily lives, recognizing the influence of the availability heuristic can lead to better decision-making. Whether it's assessing personal risks, making investments, or forming opinions about social issues, understanding that our judgments are often based on readily available information, not necessarily accurate or representative, can help us approach situations more thoughtfully. Ultimately, while the availability heuristic serves as a useful mental shortcut, enabling quick decisions in a complex world, it's crucial to remain vigilant about its potential to mislead. By acknowledging its presence and actively seeking out comprehensive information, we can make more informed choices and foster a more accurate understanding of the world around us. Imagine you're shopping for a new watch. The first one you see is priced at $1,200. It's sleek, luxurious, and way beyond your budget. Then, you spot another watch, similar in style, priced at $300. Suddenly, the second watch seems like a bargain, even though it's still a significant expense. This scenario illustrates the anchoring bias, a cognitive bias where the first piece of information we receive, the anchor, heavily influences our subsequent judgments and decisions. Anchoring bias is pervasive in our daily lives. It affects how we perceive value, make estimates, and even form opinions. For instance, in salary negotiations, the initial offer often sets the tone for the entire discussion. If a candidate expects a salary of $70,000, but the employer starts with an offer of $60,000, the final agreed-upon salary is likely to hover around the anchor, even if the candidate's market value is higher. This bias isn't limited to numbers. It also influences our perceptions and judgments. Consider a courtroom scenario where a prosecutor suggests a lengthy sentence for a defendant. Even if the defense presents compelling arguments for leniency, the judge's final decision may still be swayed by the initial anchor set by the prosecution. Retailers and marketers are well aware of anchoring bias and often exploit it to influence consumer behavior. A common tactic is to display a high-priced item alongside a more moderately priced one. The expensive item serves as an anchor, making the other seem more affordable by comparison. This strategy is evident in restaurants that list a premium dish at the top of the menu to make other items appear reasonably priced. Anchoring bias also affects our self-perception and personal goals. If we set an initial goal to lose 10 pounds, that number becomes our reference point. Even if we later realize that a 15-pound weight loss would be healthier, we might still aim for the original target because it's anchored in our minds. In the realm of real estate, anchoring bias can significantly impact buying decisions. A property listed at a high initial price may lead potential buyers to perceive subsequent price reductions as bargains, even if the adjusted price still exceeds the property's market value. This perception can prompt buyers to act quickly, fearing they might miss out on a deal. The anchoring effect is not just a modern phenomenon. It has deep roots in human psychology. Our brains are wired to rely on initial information as a reference point, especially when faced with uncertainty. This reliance can be beneficial in some situations, allowing for quick decision-making. However, it can also lead to flawed judgments when the anchor is arbitrary or irrelevant. One classic study demonstrating anchoring bias involved participants spinning a wheel with numbers ranging from 0 to 100. After the spin, they were asked whether the percentage of African countries in the United Nations was higher or lower than the number they landed on. Then, they were asked to estimate the actual percentage. The results showed that participants' estimates were significantly influenced by the random number they received, highlighting how arbitrary anchors can sway our judgments. To mitigate the effects of anchoring bias, it's essential to be aware of its presence. When making decisions, especially significant ones, take a step back and consider multiple perspectives. Seek out additional information and challenge initial assumptions. For instance, in negotiations, research market rates and be prepared to justify your expectations with data rather than accepting the first offer as a baseline. In everyday situations, questioning the source and relevance of the initial information can help. If you're shopping and encounter a discounted item, consider whether the original price was inflated to create the illusion of a bargain. By critically evaluating the anchor, you can make more informed choices. Anchoring bias also underscores the importance of setting appropriate reference points. When setting personal goals or evaluating options, ensure that your initial benchmarks are based on accurate and relevant information. This approach can lead to better outcomes and reduce the likelihood of being swayed by arbitrary anchors. In conclusion, anchoring bias is a powerful cognitive phenomenon that influences our decisions and perceptions in various aspects of life. By recognizing its presence and actively challenging initial reference points, we can make more rational and informed choices. Awareness and critical thinking are key tools in overcoming the subtle yet pervasive effects of anchoring bias. Imagine you're at a grocery store, deciding between two brands of yogurt. One is labeled 80% fat-free, while the other reads, contains 20% fat. Both convey the same information, yet the first seems more appealing. This subtle difference in presentation influences your choice, illustrating the framing effect. A cognitive bias where people react differently to the same information depending on how it's presented. The framing effect plays a significant role in our daily decisions. For instance, consider a medical scenario. A doctor tells a patient that a surgery has a 90% survival rate. The patient feels optimistic and consents to the procedure. However, if the doctor says there's a 10% mortality rate, the same patient might hesitate despite the statistics being identical. The way information is framed, highlighting positive or negative aspects, can significantly sway our perceptions and choices. This bias isn't limited to health decisions. In marketing, companies often frame prices to make deals seem more attractive. A product priced at $50 with a $10 discount might seem like a better deal than one simply priced at $40, even though the final cost is the same. The initial higher price sets a reference point, making the discount feel like a gain. Political communication also leverages framing. Policies can be described in ways that emphasize benefits or drawbacks, influencing public opinion. For example, describing a tax plan as relief for hard-working families frames it positively, while calling it a burden on the middle class frames it negatively. Both descriptions might refer to the same policy, but the framing affects how it's perceived. The framing effect extends to legal contexts as well. In courtrooms, the way evidence is presented can influence jurors' decisions. A defense attorney might describe a defendant's actions as self-defense, while the prosecution frames them as premeditated assault. The framing shapes the narrative and can sway the verdict. Understanding the framing effect is crucial because it reveals how our decisions can be manipulated by presentation rather than content. Being aware of this bias allows us to critically evaluate information and make more informed choices. For instance, when confronted with statistics, it's helpful to consider both positive and negative framings to get a balanced view. To mitigate the framing effect, one strategy is to reframe information in multiple ways. If a news article presents a statistic highlighting a benefit, seek out the corresponding drawback, and vice versa. This approach helps in understanding the full picture and reduces the influence of biased framing. Another method is to focus on the underlying data rather than the presentation. By analyzing the raw numbers and considering the context, we can make decisions based on facts rather than emotional responses to framing. In conclusion, the framing effect is a powerful cognitive bias that affects our perceptions and decisions across various aspects of life. By recognizing and understanding this bias, we can strive to make choices that are more rational and less influenced by the way information is presented. Imagine watching a thrilling football match where your team clinches victory in the final minutes. As you celebrate, you might find yourself thinking, "I knew they were going to win all along." This sentiment, while common, is a classic example of hindsight bias, a cognitive distortion where outcomes seem obvious after they've occurred, even if they were unpredictable beforehand. Hindsight bias, often encapsulated by the phrase "I knew it all along," affects our perception of past events. Once an outcome is known, we tend to believe we predicted it accurately, even if we had no basis for such a prediction. This bias isn't just a quirk of memory. It influences how we learn from experiences, assess risks, and make future decisions. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Before the collapse, few anticipated the extent of the economic downturn. Yet, after the fact, many claimed they saw it coming. This retrospective certainty can hinder our ability to analyze events objectively, as we reconstruct memories to align with known outcomes. Memory distortion plays a significant role in hindsight bias. Our memories aren't perfect recordings. They're reconstructive processes influenced by current knowledge, beliefs, and emotions. When recalling past events, we often fill in gaps with information consistent with what we now know, leading to altered or false memories. In the realm of medicine, hindsight bias can have serious implications. A doctor might retrospectively believe that a diagnosis was evident, even if it wasn't at the time. This can lead to overconfidence, reduced vigilance, and potential misdiagnoses in the future. Recognizing the uncertainty inherent in medical decisions is crucial to avoid such pitfalls. Legal proceedings are also susceptible. Jurors, upon learning the outcome of a case, might believe the verdict was obvious, affecting their judgment and potentially leading to unjust conclusions. Ensuring that jurors understand the complexity and uncertainty of cases is vital for fair trials. Education isn't immune either. Students might believe they understood a concept all along after receiving the correct answer, leading to overconfidence and reduced motivation to study. Educators need to emphasize the learning process and the value of grappling with uncertainty to foster deeper understanding. Hindsight bias also affects personal relationships. After a breakup, individuals might claim they saw the signs all along, even if they were oblivious at the time. This reconstructed narrative can influence how they approach future relationships, sometimes leading to undue caution or misplaced blame. In the business world, leaders might retrospectively believe that a successful strategy was a foregone conclusion, discounting the risks and uncertainties involved. This can lead to overconfidence in future ventures and a lack of preparedness for potential challenges. Combating hindsight bias requires conscious effort. One effective strategy is to document predictions and reasoning before outcomes are known. This creates a record that can be compared to actual results, providing a reality check against distorted recollections. Encouraging a culture that acknowledges uncertainty and values learning from mistakes can also mitigate the effects of hindsight bias. By fostering environments where questioning and critical thinking are encouraged, individuals and organizations can better navigate complex situations. In conclusion, hindsight bias and memory distortion are pervasive cognitive phenomena that shape our perceptions of the past and influence future decisions. By recognizing these biases and implementing strategies to counteract them, we can cultivate more accurate memories, make better informed choices, and foster environments that value learning and growth. Imagine you're watching a thrilling football match where your team clinches victory in the final minutes. As you celebrate, you might find yourself thinking, "I knew they were going to win all along." This sentiment, while common, is a classic example of hindsight bias, a cognitive distortion where outcomes seem obvious after they've occurred, even if they were unpredictable beforehand. Hindsight bias, often encapsulated by the phrase, "I knew it all along," affects our perception of past events. Once an outcome is known, we tend to believe we predicted it accurately, even if we had no basis for such a prediction. This bias isn't just a quirk of memory. It influences how we learn from experiences, assess risks, and make future decisions. Consider the 2008 financial crisis. Before the collapse, few anticipated the extent of the economic downturn. Yet, after the fact, many claimed they saw it coming. This retrospective certainty can hinder our ability to analyze events objectively as we reconstruct memories to align with known outcomes. Memory distortion plays a significant role in hindsight bias. Our memories aren't perfect recordings. They're reconstructive processes influenced by current knowledge, beliefs, and emotions. When recalling past events, we often fill in gaps with information consistent with what we now know, leading to altered or false memories. In the realm of medicine, hindsight bias can have serious implications. A doctor might retrospectively believe that a diagnosis was evident, even if it wasn't at the time. This can lead to overconfidence, reduced vigilance, and potential misdiagnoses in the future. Recognizing the uncertainty inherent in medical decisions is crucial to avoid such pitfalls. Legal proceedings are also susceptible. Jurors, upon learning the outcome of a case, might believe the verdict was obvious, affecting their judgment and potentially leading to unjust conclusions. Ensuring that jurors understand the complexity and uncertainty of cases is vital for fair trials. Education isn't immune either. Students might believe they understood a concept all along after receiving the correct answer, leading to overconfidence and reduced motivation to study. Educators need to emphasize the learning process and the value of grappling with uncertainty to foster deeper understanding. Hindsight bias also affects personal relationships. After a breakup, individuals might claim they saw the signs all along, even if they were oblivious at the time. This reconstructed narrative can influence how they approach future relationships, sometimes leading to undue caution or misplaced blame. In the business world, leaders might retrospectively believe that a successful strategy was a foregone conclusion, discounting the risks and uncertainties involved. This can lead to overconfidence in future ventures and a lack of preparedness for potential challenges. Combating hindsight bias requires conscious effort. One effective strategy is to document predictions and reasoning before outcomes are known. This creates a record that can be compared to actual results, providing a reality check against distorted recollections. Encouraging a culture that acknowledges uncertainty and values learning from mistakes can also mitigate the effects of hindsight bias. By fostering environments where questioning and critical thinking are encouraged, individuals and organizations can better navigate complex situations. In conclusion, hindsight bias and memory distortion are pervasive cognitive phenomena that shape our perceptions of the past and influence future decisions. By recognizing these biases and implementing strategies to counteract them, we can cultivate more accurate memories, make better informed choices, and foster environments that value learning and growth. Imagine you're at a party and someone introduces you to Sarah. She's wearing thick glasses, has a stack of books under her arm, and speaks in a soft, measured tone. Instantly you think, she must be a librarian. But is that conclusion based on statistical likelihood or on how closely Sarah matches your mental image of a librarian? This snap judgment exemplifies the representativeness heuristic, a mental shortcut where we assess the probability of an event or the nature of a person based on how closely they resemble a prototype we have in mind. The representativeness heuristic is a cognitive bias that leads us to make judgments based on similarity to a stereotype rather than on actual statistical probability. It's a tool our brains use to simplify decision-making, especially under uncertainty. While it can be helpful in some contexts, it often leads to errors in reasoning and judgment. Consider the classic example from psychology, the Linda problem. Participants are given a description of Linda, who is said to be deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice. They're then asked which is more probable, that Linda is a bank teller or that she's a bank teller and active in the feminist movement. Many choose the latter, even though the probability of two events occurring together, being a bank teller and a feminist, is always less than or equal to the probability of either one occurring alone. This error arises because Linda's description aligns more closely with the stereotype of a feminist than with that of a bank teller. This heuristic doesn't just influence our perceptions of people, it affects various aspects of our lives. In hiring decisions, for instance, employers might favor candidates who fit the typical mold for a role, potentially overlooking more qualified individuals who don't match the stereotype. A study highlighted how people often judge others based on superficial traits. For example, someone with tattoos might be perceived as rebellious or unprofessional, even if they're highly competent and experienced. In the legal system, the representativeness heuristic can have serious consequences. Jurors might be swayed by how closely a defendant fits their mental image of a criminal, rather than by the evidence presented. This bias can lead to unjust outcomes, especially when stereotypes about race, gender, or socioeconomic status come into play. Healthcare professionals are not immune to this bias either. Doctors might diagnose a patient based on how closely their symptoms match a common illness, potentially missing rarer conditions. This reliance on prototypical presentations can delay accurate diagnoses and appropriate treatments. The representativeness heuristic also plays a role in financial decisions. Investors might assume that a company with a charismatic CEO and a sleek marketing campaign is a good investment, even if its financials are shaky. They're influenced by how well the company fits their prototype of a successful business, rather than by objective analysis. So, why do we rely on this heuristic? Our brains are wired to seek patterns and make quick judgments to navigate the complex world efficiently. Categorizing information based on similarity helps us make rapid decisions without expending excessive cognitive resources. However, this shortcut often leads us to ignore base rate information, the actual statistical likelihood of events. To counteract the representativeness heuristic, it's essential to be aware of its influence on our thinking. One effective strategy is to focus on base rate information. For instance, in the earlier example with Sarah, consider the actual number of librarians compared to other professions. Statistically, it's more probable that someone is not a librarian, regardless of their appearance or demeanor. Another approach is to question our assumptions actively. When making judgments, ask yourself whether your conclusion is based on objective evidence or on how well someone or something fits a stereotype. This reflective practice can help mitigate the impact of the heuristic. In conclusion, while the representativeness heuristic serves as a mental shortcut to simplify decision-making, it often leads to biased judgments and errors. By recognizing its influence and consciously focusing on statistical realities and objective evidence, we can make more accurate and fair assessments in various aspects of our lives. Imagine you're planning a vacation and fixate on the idea that sunny weather will make or break your trip. You choose a destination known for its sunshine, believing this single factor will ensure your happiness. Upon arrival, the weather is perfect, but the hotel service is poor. The food doesn't suit your taste, and the activities are underwhelming. Despite the sunny skies, you're disappointed. This scenario illustrates the focusing effect, a cognitive bias where we place too much importance on one aspect of an event, neglecting other relevant factors. The focusing effect leads us to overemphasize certain elements while ignoring others, skewing our perception and decision-making. In the vacation example, the emphasis on weather overshadowed considerations like accommodation quality, cuisine, and available activities. This narrow focus can result in choices that don't align with our overall satisfaction. Similarly, the affect heuristic influences our decisions by relying on our emotions. When faced with complex choices, we often substitute difficult questions with simpler ones, guided by our feelings. For instance, if you're considering investing in a new business venture, you might rely on your positive feelings about the charismatic entrepreneur leading the project, rather than thoroughly analyzing the business plan and market conditions. This emotional shortcut can lead to suboptimal decisions. Both the focusing effect and affect heuristic demonstrate how our cognitive processes can be influenced by limited attention and emotional responses. These biases can impact various aspects of life, from personal relationships to professional decisions. Consider the case of purchasing a car. A buyer might focus solely on the vehicle's fuel efficiency, neglecting other important factors like safety features, maintenance costs, and comfort. This narrow focus can lead to dissatisfaction if the car doesn't meet other needs, despite its excellent gas mileage. In the realm of public policy, the focusing effect can lead to disproportionate responses to specific issues. For example, after a high-profile incident of food contamination, there might be an intense focus on food safety regulations, while other pressing public health concerns, such as chronic disease prevention, receive less attention. This misallocation of resources stems from the overemphasis on a single, emotionally charged event. The affect heuristic also plays a role in public perception and policy. When people feel positively about a technology, like renewable energy, they may underestimate its risks and overestimate its benefits. Conversely, if they feel negatively about a technology, such as nuclear power, they might overstate its dangers and dismiss its advantages. These emotional responses can shape public opinion and influence policy decisions, sometimes at odds with scientific evidence. In marketing, companies often exploit these biases to influence consumer behavior. Advertisements might highlight a single appealing feature of a product, like its sleek design, prompting consumers to overlook other important aspects, such as functionality or durability. Emotional appeals in advertising tap into the affect heuristic, encouraging purchases based on feelings rather than rational evaluation. To mitigate the effects of these biases, it's important to adopt strategies that promote more balanced decision-making. One approach is to consciously broaden your focus, considering multiple factors before making a choice. In the vacation planning example, this means evaluating not just the weather, but also accommodations, activities, and cultural experiences. Another strategy is to be aware of your emotional responses and question whether they're influencing your decisions. When you notice a strong emotional reaction to a person, product, or idea, take a step back and assess whether your feelings are justified by the facts. Seeking out objective information and diverse perspectives can help counteract the influence of the affect heuristic. In professional settings, decision-making processes can be structured to reduce these biases. Implementing checklists that require consideration of various factors can prevent overemphasis on a single aspect. Encouraging team discussions and soliciting input from individuals with different viewpoints can also help balance emotional responses and narrow focuses. Educating oneself about cognitive biases is a crucial step in recognizing and addressing them. Understanding that our minds are prone to these shortcuts allows us to be more vigilant and deliberate in our thinking. By acknowledging the presence of the focusing effect and effect heuristic, we can strive to make decisions that are more comprehensive and less influenced by limited attention or emotional reactions. Imagine you're at a grocery store, faced with two brands of cereal. One is a brand you've seen advertised repeatedly, while the other is unfamiliar. Without much thought, you reach for the familiar brand, even if it's slightly more expensive. This instinctive choice exemplifies the familiarity heuristic, a mental shortcut where we prefer what we recognize over the unknown. The familiarity heuristic operates on the principle that familiar options are perceived as safer or better, regardless of objective evidence. This bias can influence various aspects of our lives, from consumer behavior to decision-making in high-stakes situations. For instance, investors might favor domestic companies over foreign ones, not because of better performance, but due to a sense of familiarity. This preference isn't inherently negative. It can expedite decision-making and reduce cognitive load. However, it can also lead to suboptimal choices. Relying solely on familiarity may cause us to overlook superior alternatives simply because they are less known. Now consider the placebo effect, a phenomenon where a person experiences real improvements in health after receiving a treatment with no therapeutic value, simply because they believe it's effective. For example, someone might report reduced pain after taking a sugar pill they believe is a painkiller. This effect underscores the powerful connection between mind and body. Conversely, the nocebo effect occurs when negative expectations lead to adverse outcomes. If a patient anticipates side effects from a medication, they might experience those symptoms, even if the treatment is inert. This illustrates how our beliefs and expectations can manifest physically, influencing our health outcomes. Both placebo and nocebo effects highlight the significant role of perception in our experiences. They demonstrate that our expectations can shape reality, for better or worse. This interplay between mind and body is a testament to the complexity of human psychology. The familiarity heuristic can intersect with these effects in intriguing ways. For instance, a patient might respond better to a treatment from a well-known brand due to their trust and familiarity with it, enhancing the placebo effect. Conversely, unfamiliar treatments might trigger skepticism, potentially leading to a nocebo response. Understanding these concepts is crucial, especially in healthcare and marketing. Clinicians can harness the placebo effect by fostering positive expectations, while being mindful of the nocebo effect by carefully communicating potential side effects. Marketers can leverage the familiarity heuristic to build brand loyalty, but must also recognize the ethical implications of manipulating consumer behavior. In our daily lives, being aware of these biases can lead to more informed decisions. Recognizing when we're favoring familiarity over quality, or when our expectations might be influencing our experiences, empowers us to make choices aligned with our best interests. In conclusion, the familiarity heuristic and placebo-nocebo effects reveal the profound impact of perception on our decisions and experiences. By acknowledging and understanding these psychological phenomena, we can navigate our world with greater awareness and intentionality. Imagine you're reading your daily horoscope and it says, "You have a deep need for others to like and admire you, yet you tend to be critical of yourself." While you have some weaknesses, you're generally able to compensate for them. You pause, reflecting on how accurately this seems to describe you. But here's the twist. This exact statement has been given to countless individuals, all of whom felt it uniquely applied to them. This phenomenon is known as the Forer effect, also referred to as the Barnum effect. The Forer effect is a psychological phenomenon where individuals believe that vague general statements about personality are highly accurate for them personally, even though these statements could apply to many people. This effect was first demonstrated by psychologist Bertram R. Forer in 1948. In his experiment, Forer gave his students a personality test and then provided each with the same generic personality description compiled from various horoscopes. Despite the uniformity, students rated the accuracy of the description as 4.26 out of 5 on average, believing it was tailored specifically to them. The Barnum effect, named after showman P.T. Barnum, who was known for saying, "We've got something for everyone," operates on a similar principle. It describes the tendency of people to accept general or vague statements as being uniquely applicable to themselves. These effects are commonly exploited in astrology, fortune-telling, and certain personality tests, where broad statements are perceived as highly accurate personal insights. Consider the statement, "You have a great deal of unused capacity, which you have not turned to your advantage." This could apply to almost anyone, yet many would interpret it as a precise reflection of their personal experience. The key lies in the human desire for affirmation and self-understanding, leading individuals to find meaning in statements that are, in reality, universally applicable. These effects are not limited to entertainment or pseudoscience. They have implications in various fields including marketing, psychology, and even criminal profiling. For instance, in marketing, advertisers craft messages that are broad enough to appeal to a wide audience but personalized enough to make each individual feel uniquely targeted. Phrases like, "This product is just what you've been looking for," tap into the Barnum effect, making consumers more likely to engage with the product. In psychology, awareness of these effects is crucial for both practitioners and clients. Therapists must be cautious not to provide feedback that is so general that it could apply to anyone, as this can lead to false validation and hinder genuine self-discovery. Clients, on the other hand, should be encouraged to critically evaluate the feedback they receive, discerning between truly personalized insights and generic statements. The Forer and Barnum effects also highlight the importance of critical thinking and skepticism. In an era where information is abundant and easily accessible, individuals must be vigilant in assessing the validity of the content they consume. Recognizing the allure of personalized yet vague statements can help prevent the acceptance of misinformation and promote more informed decision-making. Moreover, these effects underscore the complexity of human cognition and the ways in which our minds seek patterns and meaning. They reveal our susceptibility to cognitive biases and the need for ongoing self-awareness. By understanding these psychological phenomena, we can better navigate the myriad of messages we encounter daily, from horoscopes to advertisements, and make choices that are truly aligned with our individual needs and values. In conclusion, the Forer and Barnum effects demonstrate how easily we can be persuaded by statements that seem personal but are, in fact, broadly applicable. By cultivating critical thinking skills and a healthy dose of skepticism, we can guard against these cognitive biases and make more authentic, informed decisions in our personal and professional lives. Imagine you're attending a series of job interviews. The first candidate impresses you with their confidence and articulate responses. As the day progresses, you meet several more applicants, but none seem to match the initial impact of the first. Later, when reflecting on the interviews, you find yourself favoring the first candidate, even though others had comparable qualifications. This scenario illustrates the primacy effect, where information presented earlier is remembered more vividly and influences our judgments more strongly. Now, consider a different situation. You're watching a talent show, and the last performer delivers a stunning act that leaves the audience in awe. Despite earlier performances being equally commendable, the final act lingers in your memory, swaying your opinion in their favor. This is an example of the recency bias, where the most recently presented information dominates our recall and decision-making. Both the primacy effect and recency bias are components of the serial position effect, a psychological phenomenon describing how the position of information in a sequence affects our memory. Typically, items at the beginning, primacy, and end, recency, of a list are remembered better than those in the middle. This pattern has been extensively studied in cognitive psychology, highlighting the limitations and tendencies of human memory. The primacy effect is often attributed to the greater amount of attention and rehearsal that initial information receives. When we encounter new information, we tend to process and encode it into our long-term memory more effectively. This is why first impressions are so influential. The initial information we receive about a person or situation sets the tone for our subsequent perceptions. In contrast, the recency bias is linked to the freshness of information in our short-term memory. Recent events or data points are more accessible and can disproportionately influence our judgments, especially when decisions are made shortly after the information is presented. This bias can lead us to overemphasize recent experiences while neglecting earlier, potentially more relevant information. These cognitive biases have practical implications across various domains. In the workplace, performance evaluations can be skewed by recency bias, with managers placing undue weight on an employee's recent performance rather than considering their overall contributions. This can result in unfair assessments and missed opportunities for recognition or improvement. In education, students might focus more on the beginning or end of a lecture, neglecting the material presented in the middle. Educators can mitigate this by structuring lessons to re-emphasize key points throughout, and by engaging students consistently to maintain attention. In the realm of marketing and advertising, companies often leverage these biases to their advantage. By ensuring their products are the first or last seen in a sequence, be it in a commercial, on a shelf, or in a list, they increase the likelihood of consumer recall and preference. Imagine you're attending a conference, and during a series of presentations, one speaker uses vibrant visuals and an unconventional approach. Later, when recalling the event, that particular presentation stands out vividly in your memory, while the others blur together. This phenomenon exemplifies the von Restorff effect, also known as the isolation effect. It suggests that when multiple similar items are presented, the one that differs significantly is more likely to be remembered. The von Restorff effect was first identified by German psychologist Hedwig von Restorff in 1933. In her experiments, participants were presented with lists of items where one item was distinct in some way, perhaps in color, size, or meaning. The results consistently showed that the unique item was more likely to be recalled than the others. This effect underscores the importance of distinctiveness in memory retention. In practical terms, this means that making information stand out can enhance its memorability. For instance, in educational settings, teachers might highlight key concepts using different colors or fonts to ensure students remember them. In marketing, brands often design logos or advertisements that break the mold to capture consumer attention. The underlying principle is that our brains are wired to notice and remember anomalies amidst uniformity. However, while distinctiveness can aid memory, our recollections are not infallible. Enter the misinformation effect, a cognitive phenomenon where a person's memory of an event becomes less accurate due to post-event information. This effect illustrates how our memories can be influenced, distorted, or even fabricated by misleading information encountered after the fact. Renowned psychologist Elizabeth Loftus conducted seminal research in this area. In one study, participants watched a video of a car accident. Later, they were asked questions about the event, with some questions containing misleading information. For example, when asked, how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? Participants estimated higher speeds and were more likely to report seeing broken glass, even though there was none, compared to those asked, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? This demonstrates how subtle changes in wording can implant false memories. The misinformation effect has profound implications, especially in legal contexts. Eyewitness testimonies can be unreliable, as memories can be altered by leading questions, media coverage, or discussions with others. This raises concerns about the accuracy of recollections and the potential for wrongful convictions based on distorted memories. Moreover, in our digital age, the spread of misinformation through social media and other platforms can exacerbate this effect. People might read or hear incorrect details about an event, which then become integrated into their memories, leading them to believe they witnessed or experienced something that never occurred. Understanding both the von Restorff and misinformation effects highlights the complexities of human memory. While distinctiveness can enhance recall, our memories are also susceptible to distortion. This duality emphasizes the need for critical thinking and skepticism, especially when recalling events or consuming information. To mitigate the misinformation effect, it's essential to verify information from multiple credible sources and be cautious of leading questions or suggestive language. In educational and professional settings, fostering an environment that encourages questioning and critical analysis can help individuals discern fact from fiction. In conclusion, the von Restorff effect teaches us about the power of distinctiveness in memory retention, while the misinformation effect warns us of the vulnerabilities in our recollections. By being aware of these cognitive phenomena, we can better navigate the complexities of memory and information in our daily lives. Imagine you're reminiscing with a friend about a childhood event, vividly recalling a specific moment that left a lasting impression. However, your friend insists that the event never happened, or at least not in the way you remember. This discrepancy leads to confusion and self-doubt. Such experiences highlight the complexities of human memory and cognition, particularly phenomena like false memory syndrome and the curse of knowledge. False memory syndrome refers to a condition where an individual's identity and interpersonal relationships are influenced by memories of events that never actually occurred. These false memories are often vivid and emotionally charged, making them indistinguishable from real memories. The syndrome gained attention in the 1990s, particularly in cases involving recovered memories of childhood abuse during therapy sessions. Critics argue that certain therapeutic techniques, such as hypnosis or guided imagery, can inadvertently implant false memories, leading individuals to believe in events that never happened. The implications of false memory syndrome are profound, especially in legal contexts. Eyewitness testimonies can be unreliable, as memories are susceptible to distortion over time and can be influenced by external factors. For instance, the wording of questions posed by investigators can alter a witness's recollection of an event. This phenomenon, known as the misinformation effect, demonstrates how easily memories can be manipulated, leading to false convictions or the misremembering of critical details. On the other hand, the curse of knowledge is a cognitive bias where individuals, once they have acquired knowledge, find it challenging to imagine what it's like not to possess that knowledge. This bias can hinder effective communication, as experts may struggle to convey information in a way that's accessible to novices. For example, a seasoned programmer might find it difficult to teach coding basics to a beginner, inadvertently assuming that certain concepts are universally understood. The curse of knowledge can have significant consequences in educational settings. Teachers may overestimate students' prior knowledge, leading to lessons that are too advanced or lacking in necessary foundational information. In business, professionals might present ideas or strategies without adequately explaining the rationale, assuming that their audience shares the same level of understanding. This disconnect can result in misunderstandings, reduced engagement, and ineffective decision-making. Both false memory syndrome and the curse of knowledge underscore the fallibility of human cognition. Our memories are not perfect recordings of events, but are reconstructive, influenced by various factors such as emotions, suggestions, and time. Similarly, our ability to communicate effectively is often impeded by our own knowledge, making it difficult to relate to those with different levels of understanding. To mitigate the effects of false memory syndrome, it's essential to approach memories with a healthy degree of skepticism, especially when they resurface after long periods or under suggestive circumstances. Corroborating evidence, such as photographs or testimonies from others, can help validate memories. In legal contexts, ensuring that investigative techniques are non-leading and that witnesses are not exposed to misleading information is crucial. Addressing the curse of knowledge requires conscious effort. Experts should strive to simplify their explanations, avoid jargon, and seek feedback to ensure their message is understood. Empathy plays a vital role. By putting oneself in the learner's shoes, communicators can better tailor their messages to the audience's needs. In conclusion, understanding and acknowledging the limitations of our memory and communication abilities are vital steps toward improving interpersonal relationships, education, and decision-making processes. By being aware of phenomena like false memory syndrome and the curse of knowledge, We can take proactive measures to ensure accuracy in our recollections and clarity in our communications. Imagine you're participating in a health study where researchers ask you to recall your dietary habits from the past year. You try to remember, but the details are fuzzy. Perhaps you overestimate your intake of healthy foods or forget about occasional indulgences. This scenario illustrates recall bias, a common issue in research that relies on participants' memory of past events. Recall bias occurs when individuals do not accurately remember previous experiences or exposures, leading to systematic errors in data collection. This bias is particularly problematic in retrospective studies, where participants are asked to recall behaviors or events after they have occurred. For instance, in studies investigating the link between diet and disease, participants with a particular health condition might recall their past diet differently than healthy individuals, skewing the results. Several factors contribute to recall bias. The passage of time can erode memory, making it challenging to remember specific details. Emotional factors also play a role. Significant or traumatic events may be remembered more vividly, while mundane details fade away. Additionally, individuals may unconsciously modify their recollections to align with current beliefs or to present themselves in a favorable light. To mitigate recall bias, researchers employ various strategies. Utilizing objective data sources, such as medical records or food diaries, can provide more accurate information than relying solely on memory. Designing questionnaires with specific, clear questions helps reduce ambiguity and improve the accuracy of responses. Moreover, conducting prospective studies, where data is collected in real time, can minimize the reliance on memory and reduce the potential for recall bias. Now, consider another phenomenon. You're watching a movie, and during a scene change, a character's outfit changes color, but you don't notice. This is an example of change blindness, a perceptual phenomenon where observers fail to notice significant changes in their visual environment. Change blindness highlights the limitations of our visual attention. Our brains are adept at constructing a coherent representation of our surroundings, but they don't process every detail. Instead, they focus on elements deemed important, often missing changes that occur during visual disruptions, such as a cut in a film or a brief obstruction in our line of sight. This phenomenon has been demonstrated in various experiments. In one study, participants watched a video where a person asks for directions. During the interaction, a large object passes between the participant and the individual asking for directions, who is then replaced by another person. Surprisingly, many participants fail to notice the switch, illustrating how change blindness can occur even in face-to-face interactions. Change blindness has practical implications in everyday life. For example, drivers may fail to notice changes in traffic signals or the sudden appearance of pedestrians, leading to accidents. In security settings, personnel might overlook alterations in surveillance footage, potentially missing critical events. Understanding change blindness underscores the importance of designing environments and systems that account for human perceptual limitations. Both recall bias and change blindness reveal the fallibility of human memory and perception. They remind us that our recollections and observations are not always reliable, influenced by various cognitive processes and limitations. Recognizing these phenomena is crucial, not only in research and safety-critical professions, but also in our daily interactions and decision-making. To counteract these biases, awareness is the first step. Being mindful of the potential for memory distortion can prompt us to seek objective evidence when recalling past events. In situations requiring keen observation, such as driving or monitoring security footage, implementing checklists or automated alerts can help compensate for our perceptual blind spots. In conclusion, while our cognitive abilities are remarkable, they are not infallible. Recall bias and change blindness serve as reminders of the importance of critical thinking, objective data, and system designs that accommodate human limitations. By acknowledging and addressing these biases, we can improve the accuracy of research, enhance safety, and make more informed decisions in our daily lives.